Pascal Siakam puts pen to paper. What did we learn at his press conference? How did we get to this point? What a big day for the Pacers. Plus, Rick Carlisle talks Jarace Walker in his second season and upcoming role and other Pacers notes and free agency things for you to know. All coming on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Tuesday and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we have a lot to get to. Busy news stuff coming in from the Pacers, who started Summer League camp over the weekend, who have finalized all their free agency transactions, and have had their big presser of the summer. Pascal Siakam officially put pen to paper, sort of, on Monday in his official re-signing, had a press conference. Kevin Pritchard spoke, Rick Carlisle spoke, and he spoke on the radio in the morning about Jarace Walker and had a lot of very insightful things to say about Jarace and his second season that a lot of people have already heard, and a lot has happened in the world of transactions and free agency and rumors. And so we have a ton to get to, although the rumor section will be much shorter today because it's mostly just me opining on stuff. And we have to start with the biggest news of all, and that's Pascal Siakam officially re-signing, as it has been known since the middle of June, right? It became official on Monday. Siakam, of course, had his press conference, introductory press conference is the wrong word, but reintroductory presser. And I thought a noteworthy thing was that it was pointed out by Rick Carlisle and then reconfirmed by Siakam that this was the first press conference he's ever had. And he has had max contracts before. He's won championships before. He's a great player. He's made an All-NBA team twice, and this was his first one. And that actually matters to set the scene of the day. And I don't want to start there, but we will get back to that, because this should be a note-taking presser and experience for every front office, including the Pacers, for years, on how this playbook should look. And it's different for every player and person and human. But the way the Pacers got from January 18th, when they made this trade, 19th, whatever it was, until today, getting Pascal Siakam to re-sign, is, at least given the human element of who Pascal Siakam is, a masterclass in recruiting and keeping somebody. And again, a lot of stuff is potentially specific to Siakam, but the Pacers deserve a ton of credit for getting it to this point. Here's what I mean by that. I think, and I've said this, that when they made the trade in January, there was a percentage, they had to feel like there was a percentage chance they were going to be able to re-sign him. And that percentage probably varies from person to person. If I'm running a team, it's like 95 or higher, right, for a trade like that. But whatever, they had to feel some level of good about it. But you never know, right? And I bring up that you never know to say Rick Carlisle was on 107.5 The Fan, the morning show, with Andy Sweeney and Kevin Bowen. Highly recommend you all check this out. And he talked about this, right? He's been the coach of teams for forever. And he talked about not assuming stuff. And his actual notes for that were when he coached Dirk, right? Every time Dirk was a free agent, everyone just, oh, he's going back to Dallas. That's his place. And I remember there was the summer where he was like connected to the Warriors and like all this stuff. And he brought up LeBron leaving Miami, which was a surprise to a lot of people at the time, right? Like, you can assume, and most of the time it does work out that way, but you can't know. You don't know. And the Pacers didn't know. And so he also talked about the season not going into the abyss. This is just in the radio call in the morning, and this all will become part of the story I'm about to tell. In that stretch where after they traded for Siakam and Haliburton was still hurt, and he came back too early, and then he came back, but was only playing 20 minutes and not playing a full quarter of every game, they could have sunk their season in that stretch. But Siakam kept them afloat by playing well and keeping the team going. And they still had some rough losses in that stretch. And so Rick mentioned those things. And I think that was very telling. The other thing that was telling, to finish up setting the scene for the story, because I'm going way too much scene setting. This all matters a lot. Again, for the Pacers and other small market teams hoping to reproduce this. Kevin Pritchard took the stand today, and he talked about how this kind of all bubbled up for him when the Pacers were making their in-season tournament run. And they made the finals. And he remembers thinking and talking to the rest of the front office at the time, like, man, we should really be more aggressive. Like, this team is good. And so it worked out perfectly that, a little over a month later, hey, look, this guy who plays the right position and fits our style and is very talented is available with Siakam. So this really starts bubbling in December. And they had to have the warm and fuzzy feeling that they were probably going to be able to keep the guy to give up 3 first for him anyway. All that said, with no assumptions to be made to set the scene here totally, they had to do a lot of things. They had to prove to Pascal Siakam that the Pacers were the right fit for him and who he is. They had to make sure that he loved the team and the direction everything was headed. And they couldn't let him sulk in a trade. And he's talked about how hard getting traded was for him. He loved Toronto. It's like the only place he'd ever lived since joining the NBA. And so a couple things mattered. And Siakam talked about this at his presser. I'm not just making this up or going from, well, this is what the GM said the coach had. Pascal talked about this today, right? So the 3 things, or 3 of the things that he really mentioned as being important, were winning, fans, and support from the franchise. And I wrote a whole story about the support part of this for his ex interview because it was a big deal. The fan part, right? This is the one that I can't speak to because I'm not on the team. But he said that he's played in Indy before, but when he played for Indy, it felt different. And of course, the fans were, really invested this year. The first year you break expectations is always fun for fans. They did that. They made the conference finals. Love the fan experience, right? That's great. The support part is the part that other teams should take note of, and we'll get to that in a second. The winning part is where I think that the conference finals run can't be taken for granted, right? He talked about this coming from Toronto to Indiana. He said, man, when I was with the Raptors, Kyle Lowry and DeRozan, and then that comes to Kawhi, and then they're still good post-Kawhi for a second there. People forget that part, right? They made the playoffs all the time. In fact, they very often won multiple rounds, right? He's made the conference finals 2 or 3 times. He made the finals and obviously won it. Second round, a lot of LeBron losses, but that's still successful. And so when that stopped happening, he was like, oh, this isn't normal. And you want to chase that winning feeling, especially when you've won the championship. And so they had to prove they could win and have a potential championship foundation for him to want to, or at least feel very good about, making Indiana his permanent home. And the conference finals run, albeit we can all talk about the injuries, whatever. I've made my stances on that many times. They did it. They won. They made the conference finals. The proof of concept that this can be a good team on a big stage was there. They did not have to sacrifice their style to be the best offense in the playoffs. And even with a very young team, they made it very far. And they had chances to win more games than they did in the conference finals, but they don't get to if and or but any of that because they got swept. But either way, that was important. The basketball part of this stuff, the fans, the winning mattered, and they did a good job there. Where they did an awesome job was the support. And when players get traded, especially so when it's their first time, right, it's so easy to be like, oh, they're millionaires, whatever. But a lot of times you're uprooting your family or you're leaving somewhere you've lived for a long time. You're going somewhere completely new. And yeah, your job can be therapeutic. Think about it. That's hard, right? That's hard for everybody. And for Siakam, it was his first trade. He's very sentimental and creative. And I give you evidence that he brought his own camera to the press conference to take photos. And he's had this camera for about a year. In fact, if you want to hear more about this, I asked him questions about it in our little breakout session press conference, which on my own personal YouTube page, I post some of that stuff. I'll put the link in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Anyway, he does care about that stuff. And so he came to the Pacers, and the front office meets him the second he gets off the plane. And they set him up exactly how he needs to. And they meet him where he is. And a big part of it that he talked about today was they were supportive, but not overbearing. They struck the right balance of helping him through the trade, of making him feel at home, of making him feel like he really mattered to the team, putting him in a role that made sense for him basketball-wise and leadership-wise, where his voice was heard right away, right? That's the part where they really sealed the deal, at least to me, and especially hearing him talk about it and the front office talk about it is, look, the basketball part mattered, right? They made the conference finals. That's huge. That part of the blueprint's obvious, right? If you win more with players don't want to stay or come to your team. But for Siakam specifically, that all, it felt genuine to him that they were supporting him in that way and wanted him to be totally embedded in their franchise. And that culminated with free agency, which started with a meeting in Orlando. Siakam and his representation were there, and Rick Carlisle went, and Lloyd Pierce went, and Chad Buchanan went, and I believe Kevin Pritchard went. This was all the people that I'm just remembering names that were said during the press conference. And Siakam loved that meeting, right? They got to meet each other more and learn more about each other because during the season that's not really possible. And so he could, make it clear. Like, this is the place I want to be. This is what I want. And that meeting mattered a great deal. And it showed more support. They wanted to go meet him and figure that all out, figure out the contract. And they did, the 4-year max. And then to cap it all off, the press conference, his first ever one. He gets to see all the faces. He takes the picture with everybody, all the Pacers staff, like hundreds of people in the back. Not all, but most, right? That's the playbook. And the Pacers nailed it in this instance. And they keep Pascal Siakam because of the right amount of support, the right amount of winning, the good fan base, the team headed in the right direction where he's a great fit. And it doesn't hurt to offer him 4 years, $189 million, of course. But Pascal Siakam's back on the team, and I think said correctly by Rick Carlisle and Kevin Pritchard, the best free agent signing in Pacers history. Now, I'm going to caveat this because I've said this myself. One, David West is up there too. And what I will hear from people is David West switched teams. He was on a different team and signed with the Pacers. That is a little different than re-signing in practice and how it actually feels in terms of luring somebody. And two is my pre-2000 free agency knowledge is bad. Like, I've read the stories about Reggie Miller and the Celtics or whatever. I have no idea if he was ever actually even a free agent for that stuff. And so if so, like, the Pacers keeping Reggie his whole career is probably their best free agency moves, but I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is, in at least the era of basketball that I have understood enough to know this stuff, 2010-ish and later, Siakam is definitely the best free agent signing the Pacers have had. Huge day for the team to be able to keep him. Very successful process from January till now. And we learned a lot about that process, about the support, about the meeting in Orlando, about how much this press conference mattered, about how much he valued the team and the teammates he had that met him every step of the way and played well in the postseason. That's how you get it done. I have a story about all this on SI that you can read, but I think that was a big takeaway from the Pacers and something that in the future with other great free agents for their own team, you know, maybe it comes to this with Haliburton in 5 years, who knows? Myles Turner's going into free agency this year. Everything matters, and all this stuff's going to matter. And they're going to have to do it again, but they got it done with the best guy that was on the market for them. They made it clear that he was party number one. They made him feel like it, and they got it done. Huge day for the Pacers, huge free agency process, and Pascal Siakam is back, and now the expectation is going to be lots of wins, the playoffs, etc. for the Pacers every year. He is with the team. You know what else would help with the playoffs? Jarace Walker being better and growing into a player that the team very much needs. His skill set looks like a hand-in-glove fit if it comes to fruition. And Rick Carlisle talked a lot about Jarace Walker this morning on the same radio interview that I referenced earlier when he was talking about Siakam. Boy, do we have a lot to dive into with Jarace. Before we talk about those comments, Jarace's potential role, what he's working on, all sorts of stuff. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Comparison is the thief of joy to anyone. It's easy to envy other people's lives, and it might look like that everybody has it all together on their Instagram, for example, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. Therapy can be helpful for a variety of things: learning positive coping skills, setting boundaries, empowering you to be the best version of yourself. It's not just for people who have experienced major trauma. It can help you with so many things. So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch at any time for no additional charge. So stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, Locked On Kings. DeMar DeRozan is a king. That's crazy. What a great move for honestly, kind of every team. The Bulls had a very bad offseason, but at least this trade, what they did makes a little sense to me. I wish they would have gotten Harrison Barnes in the pick swap too, but hey, everybody got out all right. In here, any of those three teams, Locked On Spurs, Locked On Bulls, Locked On Kings for the DeRozan trade, 3-teamer. Let's talk some Jarace Walker. So Kevin Bowen, Andy Sweeney on the morning show, asking Rick about Jarace Walker, kind of generically, kind of specifically. I don't want to describe the questioning too much, but Rick just went. He talked for a while. I tried to transcribe it and got to 700 words. And it was very very revealing, right? He talked a lot about conversations with Jarace Walker this summer, what they want to see from him, what it will take for him to get minutes. And I don't want to just read the quotes; that'd be really boring. But we'll get into some of them and what it means. But I think the more revealing part is, first of all, he talked about Jarace coming in with expectations, and they'd have honest conversations with him about playing and all that kind of stuff, and opportunities and all that. But Rick talks about earning it a lot, and they talked to him about what it would take for him to earn it. And some of the stuff he talked about in this interview was getting Jarace to get to a level of conditioning that was the best of his life, right? And so he's been in the gym for 3 straight weeks, Rick said, and a big part of this and a big person in all this is Jim Boylan. Jim Boylan last summer did a lot of work with Jalen Smith and Isaiah Jackson very similarly, right? A lot of repetition, a lot of hard stuff, a lot of get in shape kind of stuff. And Isaiah Jackson, Jalen Smith both had career years. He described his workouts as like high level and then called them like football workouts, basically. And so with those comps in mind, of those two players having a great year and getting in shape, they suggested to Jarace to do the same thing, and he's done it for 3 weeks. And so now he's in training camp for Summer League, and that's part of what they want to see, is that he hits the floor in Summer League and is just in way better shape than the guys he's playing against, right? Just can grind it out the whole game, fly up and down the floor, never get tired. That would obviously be significant, right? And that's going to be hard, I think, on TV to really see. I'm not going to be covering every Summer League game in person, but I do understand that being important for a young player, because if you're going to need to rely on him, you need to know that he's giving 100% effort the whole time he's out there, and conditioning is, of course, a big part of that. But there's more to it, right? Because he did talk about positional size and how Jarace has that, and he's playing the 3 in Summer League. I think that's a key thing we learned from Gennaro Pargo through these things. Is it sounds like the starting 5 is going to be guys who were on the Pacers last year. We'll talk more about that in the next segment. But if he can show a high level motor, and something else Rick Carlisle talked about for Jarace at the 3 is physicality and rebounding, right? If he can do that kind of stuff, defend his matchup, that's going to matter. And the quote was, we put it out there to him that if he can demonstrate that he can play with a high motor, high level of physicality, that he can rebound, and that he can take on a defensive matchup, he's a guy that can be a factor in our rotation and perhaps even a major factor. So if you have been thinking about and wondering, can Jarace play? What's his spot in the rotation going to be? I'll muse on that in just a second. But that's what it will take. That's what Rick Carlisle believes it will take, is motor and conditioning and defense and rebounding, all the stuff that he was built to be able to do coming out of the draft. I loved him as a prospect, right? I think he can do all this stuff. But they saw during the playoffs that physical play mattered a lot, and they want Jarace to be able to show those things. And he even said if he can demonstrate those things, he's got a chance to play for the Indiana Pacers this year, right? And that matters. And then he went on to talk about all his natural gifts that matter a great deal. But he called this an important summer, right? He said, I'm watching it very closely. We're watching it very closely. He's done his part so far. And that was Rick Carlisle and Jarace. And there's a lot more about, Jarace's response to being challenged and being a young player. Kevin Bowen tweeted the whole interview. I highly recommend you listen to it because it's very good and insightful. And Rick talked about, Pascal and a bunch of other stuff about the team. It's all very good. But this is the stuff they want to see, is like consistent fight and motor and battling and physicality in a way that was not really there last year. And Jarace does have some, despite being a good defender, this was noticeable on the tape last year. Like, he does have some finesse qualities to his game. And if he's going to be this linebacker-sized dude, that's going to matter, right? That's going to be a big deal if he can kind of use that to his advantage. The final quote I would point out about Jarace from Rick is, I don't care how many points he scores this summer. I don't care how many assists he gets, or how many pretty plays he makes. We're looking at, what does the motor look like? Can he consistently hit people? Can he rebound? Can he consistently run? And is his conditioning level better than the guys he's playing against? That's where it's at. So if you're watching Summer League and watching Jarace Walker, those are the things you need to keep an eye on. And obviously, if he's getting by guys because he's better conditioned and scoring or passing, that's great. That's even better. But I think what he's saying makes a lot of sense to me. Like, they're going to need to rely on him. They're going to need to know that he's given 100% every second he's out there. Ben Shepherd did that last year and earned a bunch of minutes and played very well. And Rick gushed about Ben Shepherd later in the interview, and including his playoff performances. So I thought that was very revealing, and that's going to be stuff that is less fun, I would say, to watch for in Summer League, but certainly important. Is, can Jarace Walker, the wing, who's playing the 3 for that group, outrun guys and outcondition guys and just play powerfully, right? I think that's the word I'm going to use a lot during Summer League. Does Jarace Walker look powerful and intimidating and dominant in a lot of ways that may not necessarily show up as just like points or assists or whatever? And the other Jarace thing I want to bring up is a small difference from last year that I think people are really overlooking, And that is that the rotation shakeout is different than opening night last year in a way that's really going to matter for him, right? Because when their opening night roster last year, right, they had Buddy Hield and Bruce Brown and Jordan Nwora and Daniel Tice and all these other depth pieces, right? And they smoked the Wizards by 25 or whatever on opening night last year. So this is kind of hard to say. But remember, TJ McConnell was out of the rotation to start last season, right? Isaiah Jackson out of the rotation, TJ McConnell out of the rotation, Jordan Nwora out of the rotation, Ben Shepherd out of the rotation. I'm bringing up all these names to say that, remember, their opening night rotation last year was Toppin, Brown, Turner, Haliburton, Mathurin, with a bench of Smith, Nesmith, Nembhard, Hield, right? So there's a lot of guys I just said who ended up having an impact on their season or playing. A lot of them are gone or have been traded for something else, right? And sometimes it's good, but the something else that came in or the stuff that got traded away, Jarace leapfrogged a lot of them, right? Young guys that came in trades, Furphy, whatever, right? Kendall Brown got his promotion. So all that to say, he's not starting from square 14 where he is, deeper in the rotation like he was on opening night last year, whatever square you want to say he was on. He's now at square 11 to me. And my assumption right now is that the bench unit would be McConnell, Mathurin, Shepherd, Toppin, and Jackson. But that matters a great deal to say he's guy 11 instead of 14 because Ben Mathurin injury, slide Shepherd down, in comes Jarace Walker. Ben Shepherd injury, in goes Jarace Walker. Obi Toppin injury, in goes Jarace Walker. Isaiah Jackson injury, Obi Toppin goes up, in comes Jarace Walker, right? And that's just the bench. The starters are the same way. 2 through 5, someone gets promoted, and you could slide Jarace Walker into play, right? So the difference between where he was to start last year and this year, yeah, he might still be out of the rotation. And I've been struggling to really contextualize how I feel about that because it does make the most sense. And they're playing young guys too who played better than him last year to do what they've done. But it also feels like he should play. And I don't really know how to balance those thoughts in my head. But he only played 33 games last year. Like by default, it's going to be more this coming season because of that, exactly what I just explained. You could even say a point guard gets hurt, Nembhard gets slid down with the second unit. They need 2 guard minutes. Ben Shepherd gets them, and now Jarace Walker's playing. Right? Like it's so easy to figure out, how he gets more games and opportunities than last year, right? Where guys like Bruce Brown played as many games as him, right? Buddy Hield is at 52. He's gone. Bruce Brown played 33. He's gone. I'm having a lot of trouble now with the exercise beyond that, but that's a lot of guys behind him who play, like Doug McDermott's gone, who played 18 games. Jordan Nwora played 18 games. That is in total over 120-something games between those 4 guys I just said. Like, imagine Walker, he can't play that many games, obviously, but getting a lot of those chances, right? I think he's going to play in over 50 games this year, likely even more than that. And that is just because of those promotions. That doesn't sound like a promotion, going from a deep rotation guy to a shallow rotation guy, but it's just going to cause him to play more. Someone is always out, right? All the time. Very rarely is a team fully healthy. And basically any injury except for like Haliburton or Nembhard, Jarace Walker is the guy who's benefiting and playing. So that's not the awesomest plan ever, but for a team with no bad, dumpable salary and a lot of good players on good deals who's clearly ascending in the right direction with a young team, that makes sense to me as a path forward for him. And if he does all this stuff Carlisle said, bada bing, bada boom, here's actual minutes. So Summer League's going to matter. I think Rick's points matter. I hope that made you feel a little better about where Jarace could be headed from a minutes perspective this year, because that makes a lot of sense to me. Again, that's a lot of chances and guys I just said who are no longer in front of him in any capacity. Nwora, McDermott, gone. Brown, gone. Hield, gone. Of the top 16, that's 4 of their top 16 in games played last year, right? So now it's already down to 12. And one of the guys above him, too, is Jalen Smith, who's gone. So I expect, obviously, a lot more opportunities for him. And that is the state of Jarace Walker, which will be updated post-Summer League when he plays some games and we see what he's looking like headed into year 2. Shot looks good, man. We saw him take some threes. Not enough to do the whole bell-ringing drill, which I want to see. But he took some threes in these practices in front of us. He's making them. Him and Furphy look like they're shooting pretty well. Let's close out with a few more notes about the Pacers and free agency and stuff of the like to close out today's show. Before we do that, though, we need to talk about FanDuel. I love sports. Love them so much, I never want them to stop. Watch something every day that I can. But as the playoffs wind down, NBA playoffs are over, MLB is over, we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. Baseball, love it. WNBA, fantastic. But you always want more. And FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you got to do, open the app, dream up bets anytime that you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus every single day. That's right. Every day, there's something for everybody. All summer long, booster bonus daily. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer with a daily boost or bonus. And that is on FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day, your second listen. A lot of intrigue going on around the league right now, but there's games being played. So we're going to ditch the free agency transactional cycle. Zach Edey debuted for Memphis. It was fun to watch that game in the Utah Summer League. Locked On Grizzlies for Zach Edey because the Grizzlies didn't sign any free agents, so Edey's their big guy this summer. I can't wait to hear what they have to say about it. It was a very fun game to watch, and that Jazz team is gross. That's a good Summer League team. Okay, let's close up with some Pacers notes. I mentioned Summer League stuff. I'm going to do a full Summer League preview later in the week. We've talked to, and again, if you go to the YouTube page that I talked about for myself, I'll put it in the comments. You can see Furphy, Enrique Freeman, Tristan Newton, Gennaro Pargo, and I'm missing one. Pascal Siakam from today. Lots of interviews on there from these Summer League practices, and you'll get to see the Purdue guys, Lance Jones and Dakota Mathias, on there as well. Summer League stuff is going. It sounds like the starting five, at least to open Summer League, is going to be guys who played for the Pacers last year. So that would be Quentin Jackson as the point guard. This is just a guess based on what we've seen jersey color-wise and what guys have said about the lineups, but it sounds like the starting five is going to be Quentin Jackson on a two-way last year at the 1, Ben Shepherd at the 2, Jarace Walker at the 3, Kendall Brown at the 4, and Oscar Tshiebwe at the 5. Then the bench can be some combination of the second-round picks, so Tristan Newton, Johnny Furphy, and Enrique Freeman. I bet Dakota Mathias gets some burn because he's played in the NBA before and is good. And then from there, we'll see how they expand it out between guys that they like or guys that are in the mix for opportunities this year or guys that have agreed to exhibit 10s, whatever that looks like. But that is, I think, an important note for Summer League before we get into it is that's the lineups to expect. And I think says a lot about what they're thinking with regards to Summer League and how it affects their roster this coming season. Speaking of guys who were with the Pacers last year because of that lineup, the updated ex-Pacers from last year free agency scoreboard. Jalen Smith, Bulls, we knew that one. Bruce Brown sticks with the Raptors, team option picked up. One of the most likely trade candidates in the NBA this year. Buddy Hield, Warriors, crazy sign and trade, 6 teams in one trade. That made my cat brain very happy, but that was a wild trade. Interesting landing spot for Buddy Hield there. And today we get a new one. Daniel Tice, who's one game played for the Pacers last year, qualifies him for this discussion, is headed to the Pels. He might start there in New Orleans. Good for him to find a spot like that. Isaiah Wong is on the Suns G League team, but I don't know where he's going to end up playing next year. That is it for the ex-Pacers who have new homes, who played a game for the Pacers last year. If you want to, the last thing I'm going to do is maybe not rumorsy, but talk about the trade block and the trade market, because that's kind of the natural next step, air quotes, for the Pacers would be a trade thing if they're going to make another move this offseason, which if you listen to yesterday's show where I wrapped up free agency until something else happens, the only thing I think that makes sense given their finances right now would be like signing a 1-year veterans minimum deal. That's kind of it. But what I will say is the trade market can come around whenever. It just happens. Trades are really tricky for the Pacers in their financial reality because they're not trading either of their max guys. They legally can't trade Siakam. They're not trading Haliburton. And then they drop from $240-something million players down below 20 with Turner. They can't trade Toppin. And then you're at Nesmith at 11. So it's hard to put together packages for big salary players, which is a lot of the trade buzz you're hearing right now because those big salary players need to be moved for their teams, whatever reason. They're rebuilding. They're not going to pay the guy in the future, whatever. So it's hard for the Pacers to get in on right this second the biggest names. Now in December, January, whatever, we can revisit that conversation. So if you're browsing the trade block and you wonder why is there no Brandon Ingram Pacers stuff or whatever. It's just a really hard trade to do, and then it's even harder for the Pacers to pay that guy to stay given their future financial situations. Markkanen is a very good player whose salary is not very big, so that is a plausible trade for the Pacers in terms of salary matching. But do they have enough picks to actually do that trade? It just took 5 to get Mikal Bridges. Larry Markkanen's better than him. The Pacers, I believe, can only trade 2 firsts right now. 2 firsts right now. I'm sorry. They can get to 4 at the 2025 draft. They can only trade 2 firsts right now. So that would include a lot of young players. Are they ready to do that? Do they need to be doing that right now? Markkanen's awesome. He would fit anywhere, including with the Pacers. But it's just hard in their salary situation and reality. There's only one player I've heard available that I would like sniff around as the Pacers. And this ending segment is going to be my chance to toss it in. Walker Kessler. Do I think he's the best stylistic fit with the Pacers? No. Pretty slow, not a lob threat. But that dude was an awesome rim protector as a rookie. Unbelievably good. And there's been like enough chatter about him being available. Ian Begley talking about the Jazz wanting just a first for him. I don't know if the Pacers should offer a first for him because of their current pick outlook, but could they get him for a bunch of seconds and Isaiah Jackson and something else? I don't know. If Walker Kessler is available, given that he's cheap for 2 more years before restricted free agency, I'd think about it as the Pacers if I didn't have to give up anyone in the rotation besides obviously a center. But he might just not fit, and he might not even be available, just going on reporting. But the trade block does not seem like something the Pacers will explore, including the fake trade I just made up. And that is the news of the day. The rest of the week, depending on news that happens, one day we'll talk about free agency next year and why this coming season is going to be fascinating in terms of how the Pacers team build. One day I want to talk about the center position for the Pacers because the future there is endlessly fascinating to me. And then one day will be the Summer League preview, getting through everybody on the roster, what to watch for, what I'll be watching for, key stats and notes for all the guys, stuff like that. So lots of good stuff coming here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed today's show and learned something about Siakam, Jarace, whatever. I certainly have learned a lot this week. Apologies for the lack of guests. Super busy recently, obviously with free agency and fever, and my pet is unbelievably sick right now. So that has also added a lot of time into my life. But hopefully 2 more guest shows this week. Certainly already have one lined up next weekend out in Vegas. I'll have some time to book more of that stuff in a later time zone. It's easier. So expect more voices than just mine in future episodes. Thank you all for rocking with me every day when you can. Thank you for tuning in today. Back tomorrow talking more Pacers. Till then, everybody, have a wonderful day.